Hello, and welcome to MTG Another Look. These are cards that you should take another look at. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help the channel. Thank you. First up, we're going to talk about Irenicus' Vile Duplication. This is a valuable uncommon from Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, and it's worth the price. For 3 and a blue, this sorcery reads, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except the token has flying and it isn't legendary. There are a lot of clone effects, and there are a lot of effects that make token copies of creatures, but none of them fill the niche that this one does so well. Irenicus' Vile Duplication is a sorcery, so it fits in a lot of decks that have spell synergies. It can be copied by spell copiers, its mana cost can be reduced by cards like Goblin Electromancer. But most importantly, this can copy your commander, and you'll get to keep the copy. There are a select few of the clone or copy cards that can copy legendary creatures, and the ones that can are in demand. That's part of the reason the Sakashimas are sought after, and this is one of those cards. The duplication lets you copy important commanders and double up on powerful effects. Some commanders that are great to play this on are Mizzix of the Ismagnus and Niv-Mizzet Perun. With Mizzix, its ability will decrease the cost of Irenicus' Vile Duplication so that it can cost as little as 1 to cast, and then with a second copy of Mizzix out, your other instants and sorcerers are going to get the discount twice. If you had 5 experience counters, then your next instant and sorcery will get a 10 mana discount from having your commander and the copy out. And any spell you play that would add an experience counter will add 2 instead. That's pretty impressive for 1 mana. Niv-Mizzet is powerful enough to not need any help, but drawing twice off of instants and sorceries played, and doubling the damage triggers to make every spell deal 2 damage is fun and can get oppressive. The duplication is of course also going to have token synergies. That means it will be great alongside Brutaclad Telkor Engineer's effect. It'll work well with populate effects to copy the token of a legendary creature you normally couldn't. It goes great with Adrix and Nev Twincasters, which recently got a reprint, and Jin Gataxia's Progress Tyrant. Who wouldn't want to have 3 Adrix and Nevs to make it so your next turn's first instant or sorcery is copied 3 times? Irenicus' Vile Duplication is a very powerful card that is going to surprise you in-game with how many applications it has that you didn't foresee. The second card we'll talk about today is Aerial Extortionist. For 3 and 2 white, you get a 4/3 flyer that when it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exiles the non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may cast it. Whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. Aerial Extortionist plays a lot better than it may look. It has an enter the battlefield effect, so no matter what, you're going to get the triggered ability when you play it. It's never going to be a dead card. The effect is removal and is proactive removal that can be played in your aggressive strategies. The removal effect is of course temporary and is best used as a tempo play. If you're in the driver's seat trying to attack your opponent, or your opponent is already being attacked by someone else, Aerial Extortionist is an easy way to keep the pressure on that opponent by removing a difficult blocker. I've seen Aerial Extortionist be able to bully one player by attacking and exiling whatever they play each turn. Think of the triggered ability as a free disperse every turn you connect. Of course, exiling is a little different, but it's similar in that your opponent is going to have to keep wasting their mana to get the same permanent out over and over, unless they can find a way to remove the Extortionist. In that situation, it's a must-kill threat. Did your opponent tap 6 mana to play their Shark Typhoon? No, they didn't. They have to tap at least 12 total mana to get it active now, because they have to replay it. And they're not able to make their Sharks for a whole other turn. Its other ability is passive card draw, something that's still a little limited in white, and I try to add in a dex as much as possible. Not only do you get to draw a card when the permanent you exiled is replayed, but you also get to draw a card whenever a spell is cast from anywhere other than a hand. That means every commander cast draws you a card. Flashback spells or cards cast off of impulse draw will all be drawing you cards. That opens you up to a lot of possible card draw. Your opponents are going to really want to remove it. Either they find a removal spell before any of the card draw triggers, meaning it was just a bounce spell attached to a must-kill threat, or they removed it after a draw or 2. If you manage to draw off of it at all, you get a 2-for-1 in virtual card advantage on top of the tempo swing you get when bouncing an opponent's non-land permanent. Not to mention the synergies with blink decks. Being able to ephemerate it can decimate an opponent's board, all while protecting your creature. And playing it in combination with the Drannith Magistrate can make the targeted non-land permanents permanently exiled while it's on the board. Aerial Extortionist would go well in Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, Rocco Street Chef, or Duke Older Ravenguard. The card has overperformed a lot for me. Give it a chance and see how it feels in your decks. Speaking of blink synergies, our third card is the Eternal Wanderer. This version of the Wanderer joins the itty-bitty pantheon of commander-playable planeswalkers, and is even on the shorter list of almost generically playable planeswalkers. 6 mana is a lot of mana, but what you get for it is more than worth it. Let's look at the last ability first. The -4 ability can be played immediately when you play it, and is a partial Tragic Arrogance, another card that I think is underappreciated. So if you're in a game with a clogged board, you can play your Planeswalker and get rid of all your opponent's best creatures. Just like with Tragic Arrogance, you get to choose the creatures that stick around, so you get to keep your best creature and everyone else keeps their worst creature. That can be a huge swing in your favor. The removal ability makes your opponent sacrifice, so it gets around indestructible creatures, and it doesn't target, meaning all ward and hexproof abilities are useless. Keeping this Planeswalker around for the removal ability can be some decks' only way to deal with certain creatures. The Eternal Wanderer has a static effect to help protect her from attacks. It's not the best ability, but it is often just annoying and inconvenient enough for your opponents to not be able to kill it through a chump blocker. That little bit of protection can help her stick around until your next turn to be able to use it again. Her plus and 0 abilities can both be used as a form of protection, with her loyalty adding blink ability being able to be used on opponents' creatures to prevent them from blocking or attacking, since they return at the end of their owner's turn. The plus ability can also be used on your creatures, meaning any ETB effects you might have can get reused. I think this card belongs in nearly every blink deck. If you're not in a blink deck, this card is still deserving of another look. Most decks with creatures are going to have some ETB effects, and even if the deck isn't built with the critical mass of blink synergies, the plus ability can still find unexpectedly good targets. The 0 ability makes 2/2 double strikers. That's nothing to sneeze at. Making effective 4/4s every turn without losing loyalty is very strong, and if the Planeswalker is left alive, it can create a stream of hard-hitting tokens to threaten your opponent's life total. Think of the common play patterns. You play the Eternal Wanderer, use its -4, and leave your opponents with bad 1/1 creatures, and you with your best creature that can easily block them. If your opponents don't have a removal spell, your Planeswalker will likely survive a rotation. Even if they have a hasty creature, they can attack her with 2 creatures because of her static ability. And every turn you make it around the table, you're going to have a chunky little double striker to block with as well. The Eternal Wanderer is a surprisingly difficult card to face with all these little details that give it an edge. It's a great fit in traditional blink decks like Rune of the Hidden Realm, Malik Grim Manipulator, or Gandalf the White. Fourth, we have a relatively simple but overlooked card, Into the North. It costs 1 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a Snowland card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Ever since the deck building culture has grown more competitive and fast as Commander has exploded in popularity, 2-mana ramp spells have become the standard. People used to rely on 3-mana ramp like Kodama's Reach, which is still played sometimes, but it's usually added to deck lists after all the good 2-mana ramp options are full. That means Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, Rampant Growth, Farseek, and Sakura Tribuilder are the go-to ramp spells in green. In my opinion, Into the North is easily in that same category. Even if you consider it the worst of this list, that makes it the 6th best 2-mana ramp spell, and that means it warrants inclusion in decks. You should likely be playing around 10 ramp spells in your deck to make sure you have a decent chance of having it in your opening turns. Not every deck fits the same rubric for deck slots, but in general you want about that many. Now, Into the North does require you to jump through the smallest of hoops in order to work. You have to put 1 or 2 copies of Snow Basics in your deck. That's it. If you have a few Snow Basics, then Into the North is literally Rampant Growth. It's just as good and just as playable. But it can also fetch the tap Snow Duels that were released in Kaldheim. I'm talking about cards like Snowfield Sinkhole and Rimewood Falls. Duels in this cycle are fetchable with Into the North, fetch lands, and other ramp spells that search for forests. There are other snowlands that are fetchable with Into the North, like Dark Depths, but for the purposes of this conversation they aren't too important. I'm arguing that it should be a regular in your ramp suites. Including a couple of snow basics is the most minor hurdle, and is already something people do when they are planning to play something like Field of the Dead. Into the North is a card I think is woefully underplayed, and I think it's mostly because people don't know about it. But now you do. The final card I want to mention is Urabrask Heretic Praetor. For 3 and 2 red, you get a 4/4 legendary Praetor with haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card this turn, instead they exile the top card of their library. They may play it this turn. This version of Urabrask is the least popular when it comes to deck inclusions, but I think is maybe as good as the original in terms of generic value. It's one that actually provides card advantage. The Impulse Draw at the beginning of your upkeep is nothing too special. Plenty of 4 and 5 mana permanents do the same thing. It's not groundbreaking, but it's a very useful ability to have and will help keep you from running out of cards. Urabrask comes with a decent body with haste, which is pretty good too. And you don't have to attack to get the Impulse Draw. Even just that is a pretty playable card. You're probably thinking about all the play from exile decks that this can slot into, and all that is true. But the reason this Urabrask is on my list is because of the second ability. He downgrades your opponent's draw steps into Impulse Draws. Impulse Draw is worse than a regular draw because you have to play the spell now, and sometimes that's not too practical. There's an old card called Ubamask that is almost exactly this ability but for both players. It was used as a way to shut down counterspells if you could get it into play. It and Urabrask, with its very similar ability, are very useful at interrupting draw-go decks. All the counterspells and instant speed draw effects have to either be played now on their turn or be lost forever. Having this effect on an aggressive body can help chip away at those slow mid-range and control decks that I think have a huge advantage in Commander. It's a way to fight back against the decks that ignore your attacks and bury you in card advantage. And what's cool about Urabrask too is it doesn't only affect decks that play at instant speed. It can act as pseudo discard for any deck who has a weird mana curve, or anyone who draws their spells in an inconvenient order. If you only have 4 mana and Urabrask turns your draw for turn into an Impulse Draw, you'd better hope that card is a land or a spell that costs 5 or less mana. If an opponent's Urabrask is out early and you would have drawn a 6 mana spell, then that spell's just gone forever, and you didn't get your regular draw on your draw step. Urabrask isn't a card that needs to go into Exile Matters decks only. It's good enough to slot into decks that are trying to be a bit aggressive and struggle with card advantage. It can help you smooth out your draws and put a little hitch in your opponent's turns. Give him a shot if you haven't already. He's a great fit in Lelia the Blade Reforged, Ognus the Dragon's Lash, or the War Doctor. I want to say thank you to everyone that joined me today to discuss some cool Commander deck options. What do you think of these cards? Are they worth a shot in one of your decks? Let me know in the comments and join me next time to take another look. Have a great day.